Hi, welcome to the 14-day weather forecast. The meteorological summer has now started, so can we expect lots of warm and sunny weather through the next 2 weeks? I think you probably know the answer already, but let's take a look. The animation here runs from 18 GMT, Tuesday the 4th. At the outset, it's quite a cool and showery setup because we've got high pressure centered out to the west in the Atlantic, low pressure to the north, cooler air pushing down from the northwest, reaching all parts of the UK in the short term. As you can see, as I run the sequence, it's a showery picture through the following days. Low pressure stays close by. As we head into the weekend, not a great deal changes at this point, at least. We've still got low pressure there just beginning to pull away eastwards. Cool air moving down from the Arctic really across most of the UK, probably a little bit warmer and drier I would suspect in the south, but all in all it's not a particularly warm and sunny picture. Also the isobars there quite closely packed together, the potential for it to be windy, especially in the north. But as I take this through to its conclusion, what we see is high pressure starts to build in. It becomes the dominant feature of the UK's weather, and it's generally looking like a settled end to the first week, at least if this animation from the GFS model is correct. Here is the jet stream sequence and upper temperatures as well, upper air temperatures. To begin with, the jet stream is diving down across the southern half of the UK, so much of the country on its cool northern side with that area of low pressure. Not much changes, as I've already shown, in the short term, but then later on the jet stream begins to migrate northwards, high pressure builds up across the UK, so a change taking place towards the end of the week. A few charts just to illustrate the conditions which we can expect down at the surface. This is on Thursday. Temperatures in the south there, 18, 19 Celsius perhaps, cooler as you head northwards, some showery rain up there, but a lot of dry weather in southern and central regions. Moving into the weekend, Saturday, temperatures have dipped a little bit in the south, 16, 17 Celsius, so not great if you're hoping to sit outside, maybe have a barbecue, although it's looking as though it could well be dry. A greater risk of showers in the north, some of those could well be heavy. Forwards to Monday, this is showing showers in much of the UK, drier than the southwest, temperatures similar, perhaps a little bit higher. I suspect at this point the GFS may be overstating the extent of the rain and shower risk because we've got that area of high pressure starting to become more influential. That said, it's really Tuesday and Wednesday when it becomes the dominant feature. The MorCREPS-G temperature plot for London really shows things up very nicely. To start off with, we've got maximums around 20 Celsius, but that cooler air is pushing down. So by the 5th there, maximums are around 15 or 16 Celsius. Then there is a steady upwards trend through the days which follow. Temperatures beginning to recover as we head through the rest of the first week, but there is that notable dip there at the very start, so it is rather a cool picture for the first half of June. Rainfall. Aggregates here for days 0 to 5 from the ECM and GFS models. Not huge amounts in the south and the east. Higher totals there in the northwest, particularly Western Scotland, where both of the models have quite a lot of rain being forecast, 60 to 70 millimeters. Forwards to the 0 to 10-day charts, and the values have ticked up a little bit in the south, but not much. In the northwest, there is more rain now than there was, higher totals, but all in all, it looks as though the day 5 to day 10 part of the forecast period will be rather dry in much of the UK, but particularly in the south. At least if these two models are correct. So in more general terms, how do the deterministics compare to each other as we head towards the end of the first week? Here's the GFS for high pressure building in by Tuesday the 11th. It's still centered maybe just a little bit to the west. The Canadian model also shows something similar with a high pressure centered to the west. The German icon, once more, as is the ECM. These are all really very similar. There are some differences, perhaps the ECM indicating a greater risk of showers there in the southeast, the east of England, but all in all it's a similar broad scale pattern. Finally, the UK Met Office, this has some differences. The high pressure is building eastwards and not really as far northwards in the Atlantic as the other models had. Taking them all together, it doesn't look particularly warm towards the end of the first week, although temperatures probably climbing upwards after that cool start. A lot of dry weather around, I would suspect, if these are right. The chance of showers, particularly in the east and the north. But all in all, fair weather. Now, does that continue to be the theme as we head through week 2? As ever, it's just about the trends and the probabilities of this range, with the ensemble data providing the guidance. Here's the 16-day GEFS plot for London. Very close to average upper air temperatures are being shown across the top there. The ensemble mean, the thick purple line, staying very much aligned with the thick black line, the 30-year norm throughout the second week. Now, with that said, there is quite a big spread there. Some runs bringing in significantly warmer air and some cooler. All in all, though, it looks fairly typical for the time of the year. In terms of rain, not completely dry. The number of spikes there increases later on, I think, but it doesn't look really wet at all. I think there would probably be quite a lot of dry weather around. And taking the upper air temperature forecast into account as well, it would suggest that if the sun shines, despite that average picture up aloft, it may well become quite warm down at the surface. Is that spelt out by the 2-meter temperature data tables? I think it is. Lots of orange there, 16s to 20s, but also the darker orange, 21 to 25 Celsius, and a few runs going into the 26 to 30 Celsius category. So possibly quite warm at times through the second week, certainly temperatures higher than earlier in the forecast period. Overnight lows, fairly typical. Up to Manchester, is it similar? Yes, it is. There are more rain spikes, I think, there than there were on the London chart, but the general patterns being indicated are more or less the same. 2-meter temperature data tables for Manchester, also following the same trends. Finally, up to Glasgow, was there anything different with this one? Not really. Close to average along the top, although the rain risk is higher and ongoing through the second week. More spikes there, the possibility of some significant amounts of rain in the northwest. That really fits in with those aggregate charts which I showed a little bit earlier from the ECM and GFS models. 2-meter temperatures for Glasgow, similar trends really to the locations further south, but at lower levels, 16s to 20s and 11s to 15s, making up most of the column spaces. How about rain? Well, these are the ECM rainfall probability charts showing the percentage chance of 5 or more millimeters of rain falling on the first 3 days of the second week. Generally speaking, it looks quite dry, so supporting the GEFS data. The green shading there in Western Scotland is showing the area where the greatest risk is of significant amounts of rain, so the northwest of the UK. Moving forwards, the same general patterns are being illustrated here. Perhaps the darker blue shading making inroads further southwards and eastwards, although at this range it could just be down to ensemble model scatter beginning to increase. But taken at face value, probably more changeable generally towards the end of the second week. The pressure anomaly chart from the GEFS for days 10 to 15 of the forecast period, fairly nondescript really. No drama here. There's a slight negative anomaly over the UK, so slightly lower than average pressure, but I don't think it's particularly marked. It may well be developing that negative anomaly towards the end of the forecast period as it begins to turn more changeable. Does the mean surface level pressure data table for York back up that idea? Yes, it does. Higher pressure, more likely early on. There's some red in the columns here, but that falls out, and green increases those runs going for low pressure dominated scenarios. Still lots of yellow in there, which is the dominant colour throughout week 2. So probably close to or above average pressure early on, dipping later, and all that points towards a lot of dry weather, especially across the southern half UK for the first part of the second week, but a more changeable pattern extending down across all areas later. So to summarise week 1, it begins rather cool, but temperatures gradually recover, particularly in the south. Showery, especially in the north, although I think there will be some showers making their way down to southern counties at times too. Week 2, mostly dry in the southern half of the UK early on, more changeable in the northwest in particular, and those more changeable conditions could extend to all parts of the UK later in the week. Temperatures across the UK as a whole close to the norm, but there is a possibility, as I was discussing, of some warm days developing, especially in the south. So there we have it. I think no drama really sums up the forecast this week. Rather cool early on, temperatures recovering, some showery rain around, but also a good deal of dry weather, particularly in the southern half of the UK. Well, I hope you enjoyed this forecast and found it useful. If you did, then as ever, please consider hitting the like button below and subscribing to the channel if you've not done so already. Of course, remember to stay up to date with the day-to-day weather developments by checking out the TheWeatherOutlook.com website. Thanks very much now. Bye.